Good morning, everyone. This is Andy Robertson coming at you from the DMI office with Mike Hayflick. So our friends over at DMI had given us this opportunity to highlight the Corporation for Social Security Claiming Strategies, not only our designation, but the work we do with independent financial health. And today we're here talking with our good friend, Mike Hayflick. Mike's going to share a little bit about his success and the role that really Social Security optimization, which is the focal point of what we teach, has had and played in his success. Mike, thanks for joining me this morning. I appreciate it. You're down in Florida trying to soak up the rays and get a tan, but it's great to see you and get some opportunity to have you share your story with the group. I'll do a little bit for you just to kind of kick this off. But Mike and I met about 2015, and he was transitioning from being a school teacher, fifth grade, I think it was, right, Mike?
Started at fifth, went to fourth. Yep.
Well, there you go. So Mike was an educator transitioning into the financial services industry. His brother-in-law recognized the talent and convinced him this was the place to be, and he couldn't have been any more right. Here we are, 2022. Mike's one of the most successful independent financial advisors I've had the pleasure to work with, and we work with hundreds, literally. And Mike has really taken, the bull by the horns as it relates to making himself a specialist. I think Mike will tell you that the real opportunity for him was the fact that he came with no, preconceived notions about what it took to succeed. He was not jaded at all. He was very coachable. He was very moldable. And in many ways, I think that really accelerated the type of success he's had that others may have struggled to succeed in such a quick fashion, because we all, have a tendency to come with some preconceived notions about things. So Mike had all the right intangibles in terms of his work ethic and his ability to connect with people emotionally. And when he was put in the right system, or I should say, really, in his case, he found the right system, it really took off. But Mike, tell everybody a little bit about your background and kind of, where you were, where you've been, and where you're going.
Sure. I'm happy to be here, by the way. Thanks for the invitation. And I love sharing my story. I feel like it's unique, like most people's stories are. As a career changer, Andy, as you alluded to, I came out of college, being told that I should be an engineer, and basically had no idea what engineering even was. So I ended up becoming an information systems guy, and I was terrible at it. Achieved an MBA, went into human resources and trust plans, kind of chasing the dollar in a corporate setting. And I realized that I did not want to keep waiting for the people ahead of me to retire. I felt like it was so limiting in terms of what I really hoped to achieve. So for family reasons, and truly because we had a 2-year-old and another baby on the way, I said to my teacher wife, I said, what would be perfect? She said, well, it'd really be nice if you were around more. And I was now in a small business endeavor, just running around all of New York State trying to grow a business. And I realized, thankfully, that it wasn't about me. It was about what could I do together in my family with my wife and with my 2 young daughters at that time. So I went into teaching really with the idea of, this is going to bridge the time when my kids will want to be around me. They will not be trying to find their boyfriend and girlfriends. They will need dad, and they did. And it was a really great 10 to 12 years of teaching. But I always planned to transition out. And, it was probably 2011 that I said that I would start the transition. And I ended up teaching 3 more years from the time I studied to get licensed with a Series 7 and 66. And I taught 2 years while I was trying to understand what these very successful reps were doing. So in June of 14, I left teaching, and a couple of things were very apparent to me. I had to keep learning. I had to learn at 44 years old, what are all these folks that seem to be making a great living doing? And I also realized that I had to differentiate myself somehow. I mean, how was I, a 44-year-old, going to go in there and say that I'm an adequate financial advisor to you? I'm someone who you can depend on for all the knowledge to get you to and then through a successful retirement. So I guess it all sort of started that way, Andy. Trying to figure out what to do to differentiate myself. What can I do to contribute to an already very successful team?
Yeah. And I can say this. So as I mentioned, I met Mike. He actually reached out to us. We met Mike and talked a little bit about the type of advisor that we knew firsthand really succeeded, utilizing our tools, utilizing our educational platform. And based upon that discussion, it sounded like you would be a really good fit for what we do. And just for the group, so you understand, when I say whether or not you're a good fit, what I mean is, does the work required within the system that we've created match, your skill set and the things you like to do? So what we do within the Corporation for Social Security Claiming Strategies is not only do we provide the educational component that you need to really be a specialist in the retirement income space and talk to people about Social Security in a way that's really productive, beyond just how do you calculate a PIA, but truly, how does Social Security benefits impact a broader retirement income plan? So not only do we provide that educational component, but we also provide, for lack of a better term, a philosophical component. So what should you really be focused on as a retirement income specialist when it comes to building a retirement income plan? And we felt the answer was simple. If the number one concern Americans have is the threat of running out of money, then we need to find a way to build plans right up front that we know, based upon the information we have available, like how much capital somebody has and what their income goal is and what the Social Security benefits look like, when they have other forms of guaranteed income and things like that. How can we fit all these puzzle pieces together in such a way that we know today that if they want the plan to last 20, 25, 30 years, the plan will work and be fully funded? And you have to have a bit of an analytic side to really want to do that and enjoy that. And you talked earlier about how people said, you should be an engineer. And I think that analytic side really appealed to you, because what we were able to do was say to you, somebody who didn't have all of the experience maybe that the people across the street had, say, Mike, we can show you quantitatively through the use of our educational platform and our software how the plans you build are better, more fortified for 50% less capital on average than any other plan you're going to come across. And I saw how you bought into that and how it created a passion about what you do, because you could see, as the analytic that you are, you could see based upon the numbers, there was no denying what it was that we were saying. The reality was right there in front of you. Now, of course, people can choose to ignore it because people are emotional about money. But at the end of the day, if you can convey to them with passion, you can connect with them emotionally, even though you're driving your passion through an analytic approach, right? And I know for you, I saw that happen. I saw that click right out of the gate. And, I'll just share with the group. So we met, I think it was in November of 2014, and we really engaged probably about a year later in the program. And, you've got, and I hope it's okay that I share this, but I know you've got over 200 million in AUM. Here we are, 2022, early 2022. And I think anybody, who would actually be a part of this discussion would say, wow, that's really impressive. Notwithstanding the fact that you were new to the business, just the fact that it's only been 6 years, when you think about it, 15 through 21. So kudos to you. But I think what's important for me to say to the group and for them to hear from you is, it was really your passion around the process and the fit, that made you successful. So talk a little bit about that, because you have really been instrumental in helping other people as well, because your the passion around it is actually create opportunities for others to learn from you, like we're doing today.
Absolutely. I am passionate about this. Anyone who would sit in a client meeting with me or prospective client meeting would nearly see me jumping out of my seat at times, because I do get so excited and passionate about this. I mean, let's think about this for a second. The demographic that we appeal to, in many cases, have worked 30 to 40 years of their life, making things work by working, by getting a paycheck, by getting the direct deposit every couple weeks into their accounts. They've accumulated wealth, but there's so much ambiguity and so many risks that they're about to face at retirement that they never had to because they were making a living, they were making income while they worked. So when I'm sitting with people now, I realize there's a lot of stress and anxiety already for what they're about to embark on. And if I can help remove some of the ambiguity and literally increase the probabilities of success, Andy, with a Social Security optimization software that truly has a crystal ball effect. I mean, I will speak like an attorney so often about the markets and what we might expect in models and approaches to investing, because nobody knows what the markets will do from one day to the next. But if you can introduce them to a process, as you alluded to, a process of getting 5 to 7 data points for each if they're married, and helping them remove all of the haze of what will retirement look like. I mean, you basically turn it into a celebration about retiring, and not as if it's this precipice of the cliff that they know they might go broke or are fearful they might go broke. So there's no question that the software brings a highly quantitative nature to this. And I think once people embrace that, as I've embraced the complexity of this process and the software that we all use, it takes away the emotion. It actually brings positive emotions and not that stress, that fear, and the anxiety that they felt when they first sat down with me.
Yeah, that's the key. I mean, that's truly the key to building, a strong relationship. Now, the other thing I'll share with the group, something simple, but at the same time very effective. I remember vividly talking to you one day as you were really starting to take off, and you said, I think one of the biggest things that I've been able to do is manage the objection around using an annuity, right? So of course the software really positions the annuity from a capital perspective in its most favorable light, but you're still dealing with that emotional aspect, where people are, reading things and hearing things from people who are constantly beating up annuities. And I think the way you went about describing the way we utilize annuities in our process was ideal. I remember you said to the couple you were talking to, look, obviously different people have different opinions. We use annuities for what they were designed for, to deliver guaranteed income for the duration of 2 lives on a deeply leveraged basis. We're delivering guaranteed lifetime income at an incredibly discounted price or rate. And because we use it only for what it's intended for, which is income, we use them surgically, right? So you said, I should say, you'll never see a premium from me that's $300,000. When you see an annuity recommendation from me, the premium is going to be $237,456, because that's exactly what we need to invest today to deliver the needed guaranteed income at the stated age in the future. And you described it as surgical use of annuities. So your position was, I don't lead with annuities, and I don't lead with annuities to make a commission. I leverage every tool in the toolbox as effectively as possible so that I can build better, more fortified plans for less capital. And there's Social Security's part 1, and part 2 is that annuity, which is the only place I know of that I can deliver to you guaranteed current or future income on a deeply discounted basis, and we use them surgically. We're never going to invest $1 more in an annuity than we have to. And I think that says something to the people that you're facing off with about you. You're saying, listen, I don't put everything in annuities, just like I don't put everything in managed money, right? Each tool has an appropriate use, and I use those tools the most effective way I can to deliver for you a better outcome. But talk a little bit about that, because I think, other folks need to kind of hear that, because I think inevitably what happens with any retirement income plan that includes an annuity is you eventually get down to brass tacks and you have to talk about product, even if it's from a benefits perspective. And, that whole, oh gosh, it's an annuity. I know I've already described everything already once, but just talk to me and ultimately to the group about, truly how you've gone about just dealing with that so successfully.
Sure. And I think it literally starts with attention to detail. And I'll never forget sitting through a number of prospective client appointments, receiving information back from them, sitting in the closing kinds of appointments with people. And whenever I'd hear someone say, for instance, I think my Social Security payment every month is about $2,300, or I think the markets did about 5.5% last year, or I think I'll need somewhere around $85,000 to live on in retirement, I would cringe, because to have people just speak so sort of casually about some very significant things, like the true numbers of what will make your retirement a success. Like I said, boy, when I do this, I'm going to demand specific numbers from people. And so I do. I don't think it's ever enough for an advisor to say, that's close enough, that's good enough. Oh, don't worry, we can just use that estimate. I think that's why people have come to us, to get certainty and to embrace details, and then to give them very detailed solutions to their problems and to their retirement solutions. So I think it really starts with that. Now, the software is very specific. It takes in the data that we provide to it, and it then creates outcomes with very specific numbers. So as you said, Andy, I'm not going to give them an annuity with even one more dollar of premium if the software doesn't say that's what they would need, because that's an extra dollar going toward an income solution that could otherwise then be put into the discretionary pool of wealth they have, the wealth that they want to use maybe for the random kind of take the family on a cruise, take them to Florida, take them down to Tennessee for a week. It also could take away from the legacy that they were hoping to build. And so I think levels of detail in what we all do, it seems like common sense to me, but it definitely is not common when you see people misapply an annuity. I think when you have the exact numbers and you tell people exactly why you're using that figure for the annuity, and you show them exactly what that annuity is going to do for them at a given time, there really are very far fewer issues with that tool called an annuity. And I tell people, I say, I can't erase everything you knew about annuities before you came in here, but I'll listen to them. I'll say, tell me what it was about the annuities that you've got a little bit of suspicion about. And when I hear that, I say, I completely understand why you feel that way then. I don't blame you for feeling that way. I would feel that way too, because the annuity was used like a hammer when you needed a little fine tip screwdriver. And I think if you gain people's trust, then the tool, the product that you'll use to help them just becomes secondary. All they're knowing is that they can trust someone who knows what they're doing, a specialist, and they know that the least amount of their capital is going to be used toward their retirement, and all the rest of that excess capital can be used for other things.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. And I think, when you approach about you as a specialist, as a professional, like you're saying, and set you apart maybe from the other people who are spitballing and rounding up or down all the time. The other thing I think that's worth noting and sharing with the group is the other thing that you've done really successfully from my perspective is you talk in concepts, you talk about the numbers, you show them the numbers, but in the end, you make them a client first. So your approach is, look, if you like what you see and you want to hire me to be your retirement income specialist for all the reasons I put on display, the first thing we need to do is get all your assets in one place, right? Under my control here at my firm. And your deal is, let's get all the assets in-house first. And then when the assets are in hand, you have them come back in. And that's when you go through the true tactical kind of deployment of the assets. Talk a little bit about that, because I have seen instances where financial advisors have tried to embrace what we do, and they try and focus on the product and make the individual product sale without bringing over the whole relationship. And it, at least from my perspective, it seems like those are the sales that are the most challenging to close, because ultimately you're bringing the whole thing down to a discussion about whether or not you want to buy an annuity from me versus whether or not you want to have a long-term relationship with me. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. I remember when I first started sitting with people alone and thinking, there's no urgency for me. The urgency is with them. They're the ones saying, I'm going to retire at the end of June. I believe I need to take Social Security in October. And I would tell people, you know what? Let's pick up on this conversation when you're ready. I'll be here. I'm not going anywhere. There's no urgency on my part. So to me, it was about showing that, I'm here for you whenever you're ready to make some changes, make some commitments, so to speak. So that's how I think it started. And then, I realized I needed to have a financial advisory process. I was not going to meet with, the Terry and Kim Pagula, owners of the Buffalo Bills, Buffalo Sabres. I wasn't going to meet with them differently than I'm going to meet with Mike and Julie Miller from my neighborhood, modest income, little nest egg. I said, no, I'm going to basically have a process so that at a moment's notice, selfishly, I'll reduce my own anxiety and I'll know exactly what I'm going to do with people when they come in. And so
Right.
I have a process that I take people through what I call hire, retire, expire. What are all the phases of every one of our lives? And what are we going to do? Let's acknowledge where you're at in that process. I talk about taxes and tax implications during the accumulation phase and the distribution phase. And by the way, Social Security claiming strategy, that specialization can be profoundly important for people on the tax side. And then I'll talk about investing and also how do I get paid? I always thought that was sort of funny. A lot of people, they'd have this suspicion about this advisory, position that I'm in, many of you are in. And I think to myself, why don't people just come out and say how they get paid? Of course there's suspicion if you're hiding and not telling people exactly how you get paid. But anyway, I have a process. And to me, the process guides this whole relationship that I have with my clients. And there's no perfect. We can't really know what tomorrow will bring, but they trust me because I have them on some kind of a path with the highest levels of probability that they'll be successful. And from there, then it's about products, then it's about deployment of assets. And honestly, like once you have people's trust, I feel like they know that you're going to be in their best interests as a fiduciary to them. And I think that's how we create some really, really sound retirement income plans.
Awesome. Mike, a couple more things I think are worth sharing with the group. So first thing I would say is, to your point, so you've seen over and over again through your work that not only can we build better, more fortified plans for less capital, which more often than not takes the common mass affluent client from theoretically underfunded and a very uncomfortable kind of retirement experience, or the expectation that it's going to be uncomfortable, to fully funded, or better yet, in many instances, overfunded. And that does a couple of things, as you know. Not only does it completely change the experience they're going to have in retirement and the lifestyle they're going to be able to live, but in many instances, those plans are not only overfunded, but because Social Security is carrying the bulk of the weight, if you will, from 70 and beyond, those plans are also highly tax efficient, right? Which, when we look at what the future may hold, certainly tax increases are likely for this generation in the future. But the other thing that I think is important, and it's come up a lot, I know for you, and it comes up a lot for me, is I talk with financial advisors who will tell me, when I talk about legacy, you've mentioned legacy a couple of times already. I have advisors tell me, oh, my clients don't care about legacy. And my attitude is I disagree. I think your clients have given up on legacy. I've been in this business 31 years, and the discussion, 25 years ago was 401k plans and defined contribution plans. We're going to make everybody a millionaire. That was without question. The only question was how many times over. It would be your single biggest asset. Not only would it provide an income for you and your spouse, but it would act as a legacy for your family. Then, of course, things didn't work out. Right? We saw a situation where people's assets didn't accumulate at the pace they thought they were going to. And the messaging around retirement has changed wholeheartedly as well, right? I shouldn't say wholeheartedly, but wholesale, the message has changed. Right now, it's all fear-driven. right? And a lot of the folks, I don't think it's, again, that they don't care. I think they've given up. So talk a little bit about how when you actually implement a plan and you take somebody who thought for sure they were underfunded to overfunded, and you're able to turn around and say, now that we've implemented the retirement income plan, let's talk about how we protect the balance of the assets from things like Medicare spend down. Or let's talk about how we can leverage this asset to provide a better, more tax efficient legacy for your family. Are those not welcome conversations and things that people are excited about?
They're so welcome, Andy. And I'll tell you, and you know, I'm a bit of an emotional guy. You know, we've had countless conversations, but I am just so happy and thrilled for people when I realize I've helped them in such a profound way. And when you see, you know, these couples looking at each other with such sort of senses of relief that you can do this, we are going to be okay. It's absolutely, I mean, I almost sometimes feel selfish that I'm the one getting most of the satisfaction by doing what I've done. But to your point, I think that, you know, when they embark on this retirement journey, it literally is about taking away some of the fear and anxiety of some of the risks that they're going to face. And we know that they'll face risk of markets. That's a very obvious one. But they've been told by many, well, now that you're about to retire, you better get conservative. You don't want to lose that whole nest egg, right? That's just a common thing. You're older, you must have to be more conservative now. And so we've got the risks of markets, the risks of rising interest rates. We've got inflation, which is definitely a higher risk than we've seen in many, many years. And we also have the risk of taxes. And I agree with you completely. There is no way that in the next 10, 20 to 30 years of someone's retirement, that tax rates are going to become less of a risk. Now, and we've talked about this many times, you layer on the risk of longevity to all of these other risks, and you've exponentially made your retirement a much more riskier endeavor if you live a long life, right? So living a long life adds, you know, exponentially the risks that they might face in retirement. So when people realize how they'll basically carve up or deploy their assets, their capital, when they know that there's specific purposes of every dollar, it brings them a much more, I'm going to say a much bigger amount of comprehension to what they're about to do. But it's still very unnatural to spend down capital. They don't have to go to work anymore. They'll just get income into their household. But, you know, I think that showing them, illustrating with them how this will work, and then partnering with them as all of these other risks begin to unfold in their lives, you've now become, again, the specialist, not the generalist saying, well, I really hope things go well. I'll go home tonight and pray that they go well for you. I'm not going to go home hoping that my clients pass away before they go broke. And I don't want them to think I'm going to retire before they go broke. They are not going to go broke if we can build really highly fortified retirement income plans.
Yeah, in fact, you know, ideally they're going to be overfunded. They're going to have significant capital that actually poses a threat from a tax perspective, right? Which is a high class problem, as we call it. And then it creates opportunities for us to what we call finish the plan, right? We can do some tax planning once the retirement income plan is fully funded and the excess capital can be quantified. We can do some tax planning. We can do some Medicare planning, for lack of a better term, and ultimately we can do some legacy planning. So we're taking people who ordinarily using what I'll call traditional planning methods, which is a euphemism for I don't talk about Social Security because it's too complex and I don't get paid. But if we do, you know, specialized planning, not traditional planning, where we embrace the complexity of Social Security, not only are we building better, more fortified plans for significantly less capital and taking people from underfunded to overfunded, but we're using those excess dollars to not only deliver a better experience, but protect the income and preserve the asset for the next generation. So it's a win-win-win for people who thought before they walked in, they would be lucky if they could even retire and not be a burden to somebody else. Tell me last thing, Mike. So I'll say this. I've been doing this a long time, as you know. Social Security is a really unique marketing concept because it takes away the guesswork, right? So when it comes to marketing, it's always a question whether or not what you want to talk about in any given month is what the people in the community want to hear about, right? So that's the challenge with marketing. Is this going to be timely? Social Security takes away that guesswork. It's always timely. You've heard me say this a million times. Give me any community in America and give me an opportunity to market a Social Security workshop, and I'll fill the room. The key is, can you convert the people in the room from suspect to prospect and prospect to client? And historically, been considered a great activity tool, but not a great productivity tool, because the advisors haven't found a system they can match up a planning process and a planning system they can match up with the activity system so that they work in such a way together that people understand, hey, this isn't just about Social Security. This is about retirement income planning. Now, you're living proof that when you put those together in the right way, even a guy who was talking to fifth graders last year, who's got the right skill set, the right passion, right, and a high enough interest level that if he embraces it, they can be successful. And that's not to take anything away from you. It's really about the right fit. But talk a little bit about that. I mean, how busy have you been in the time that you've been doing this work, and how much of a role has positioning yourself as a specialist played in keeping that activity funnel so full for you?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I think it comes down to keeping it an educational process. It doesn't turn into a product sale ever. The products are the result of the educational process and the process of revealing choices to people. We never have to tell people what to do. We show them what they could do. And typically, most people are going to look at that and say, well, if I'm going to, for instance, build a house, why would I want to build a house with an extra $100,000 if you're telling me I could build the exact same house with $100,000 less? I mean, it comes down to, honestly, the basics, number basics, but you have to get them there. You can't let them begin to have suspicion that the educational event that you had, that you've invited them to take part in, and the process that you've invited them to take part in suddenly will turn into a product sale. Well, they're going to get hit in the back of the head and wake up with something that they never even heard you mention. I mean, so to me, it's about taking people from the moment they want to see you at the workshop and taking them through maybe literally a 10-year timeline. Maybe it's 62 to 72. If you're sitting there listening right now, as a financial advisor, maybe a Social Security claiming strategist, that various ages along this spectrum from 62 to 72 are really, really important. 62 being the first claiming age for most people if there's not a disability involved. 65, the first moment that these folks are supposed to go out and get Medicare Part A coverage. Maybe the full retirement age from 66, somewhere in the middle between 66 and 67. 70, the maximum age to take Social Security income. And then 72, that required minimum distribution age that they will face. There are a lot of pieces to the puzzle, Andy, as you alluded to, that if you can have a mastery of these pieces, this timeline, where Social Security claiming is a profound part of this planning, they know that they don't have anyone but you there by their side that can help them understand how complex this can become. So to me, it's about how much capital do you have at the moment of retirement, and how will we deploy it, not for the next couple years, but for the next 30 years? And how will we keep more in your household than giving away to federal and state governments? So once you can define that, I think that people essentially will close me. They'll be the ones saying, what do we do next? How do we do this? Are you going to be there by my side? Are you going to be the one that we're going to see every 6 months? That's often the case. This is often. Now, I would say this to you. The best people to meet with are the engineers, the accountants, the people that have a highly sort of structured way of thinking about numbers, because those folks get it. They understand exactly what you're presenting to them. And so I would say, don't be fearful of people who want to sort of challenge the numbers. The numbers do not lie. The numbers show the picture. The numbers create the plan. And I love when I'm challenged by any of these concepts, because most people can't challenge on the actual quantitative nature of what we do. They can challenge with emotions. They can challenge you with things that happened to them in the past, things that happened to their parents or aunts and uncles or brothers and sisters. They cannot challenge on the quantitative nature of this. So to me, it's a highly, highly effective way of helping people who are approaching retirement and then getting them through a successful retirement.
Yeah, that's great, Mike. And you bring up a great point. I hear from everybody that we work with that they've never worked with more accountants and engineers. And more often than not, they've really run away from accountants and engineers for obvious reasons. But really, it's kind of the age-old story with software, right? Whether it's financial planning software, any other kind of software, the whole issue is it's kind of garbage in, garbage out, right? So if you're putting a bunch of stuff into a software and it's all predicated on assumptions, then anybody can challenge it. But what we're doing is entirely different, right? And everything we're bringing to the table from a quantitative perspective is based upon effectively guarantees. So it's a very different discussion as a result. I agree. And it's maybe for many of these highly analytic people, the very first time they faced off with somebody who does that. The other thing I'll say kind of in closing, and you can tell me if you agree. I think there's a lot of people who go out and dabble in different things, financial advisors who are truly generalists. Maybe this month I'll do a Social Security workshop in my community, and next month I'll do a women in retirement, and next month I'll do a taxes in retirement, or I'll do an RMD seminar. But I think you would agree that you have yet to come across anybody in your market, and you're in a metropolitan area, the Buffalo market, who actually is a true specialist like you. Would you agree? Is that a fair statement? I don't think you've ever told me about a time where you've lost a prospect or had an existing client come say to you, well, I have somebody else who talked to me about the very same thing you're talking to me about now. Is that fair to say that you literally, at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, you don't really have any competitors at all, do you?
No, I don't. And I think once people sit down and hear what we do compared to what some of the others might try to do, it comes down to, are you interested or are you committed? And we all can be interested in many things. I mean, I'm interested in the NFL. Am I committed to become an NFL player? I don't think so. I don't think I have the ability. I don't think I don't have the wherewithal to do it. But being interested in something, like I'm interested in the markets. I'm interested because I've got money in the markets. I want to know what's going on. I'm interested in Jerome Powell and when he might raise interest rates. I need to be interested because I need to tell my clients what is going on out there in the universe. But I have a level of commitment that I believe in our market especially is unmatched. I believe nobody will be able to tell you the facts of how certain things work with Social Security in terms of strategies better than me. And I'm not afraid to tell people that. I don't try to disparage who they've been working with or that they've been trying to do things themselves, but all I try to do is show them the abundance of value that I can bring to them. And if I can bring a really strong value proposition, I think that's what people are looking for. That's what I'm looking for. I know, Andy, that's what you and your wife look for, a good value proposition where you know that every dollar you're going to put into something, you're going to get something of equal value back. And that's what I tell people. And then if they're just not ready, you say, I am so grateful you came through this workshop. I'm so grateful to have met you. I hope that I brought you some value. Again, I'm not going anywhere. So when you're ready, if you want to move on again, take a little bit fewer inches forward, I'm ready. I'm ready to do it.
Mike, tell me this. So I'm working with Glenn and the rest of the team at DMI to help other advisors have the same kind of success you've had. What would you say to a prospective advisor about the program, about the partnership? Has it been, in a few words, how valuable has it been to you? in the development of your business, and how important is it going to be going forward?
I can tell you that in the 10th year, I'm in the 10th year now. So this July of 2022 will mark a 10-year moment of being licensed, that I've never had a declining quarter. So every quarter, my goal was try to grow every single quarter. So I've done that in 10 years. And I think that you need at-bats, you need activity to become an expert at something. You can't just study the 200-page, very complex, information about Social Security claiming strategies, and then have that guide sitting on your shelf collecting dust. It should be one of the most used guides you have. It should be, you should be using that daily. And if you're not doing it in front of people, you're doing it just to stay sharp. So if you don't get at bats and create activity, this won't be successful. So to your point, Andy, this isn't for everyone. It's for people who are motivated to teach, to educate, to get out in front of people. Back in 2015, Andy, when I became a certified Social Security claiming strategist, the Congress had just passed the 2015 Bipartisan Budget Vote Act, which undid some of the advanced strategies. Well, I didn't know that was going to happen, but what it did was create an immediate response. I had 60 to 70 people showing up at November, December workshops. That went into January with 80 to 100 people. I had to rent out a much bigger Marriott conference room in the area. And I'll tell you what, if you're okay with being kind of sort of put into the frying pan, and if you respond, I mean, it's immeasurable what that does. I mean, being there at that very critical moment was life-changing. I mean, I became this Social Security expert, someone who people knew they had to talk to. And then I can just teach people by showing. I can show people, I can explain, I can script out how I approach this. And I think activity, obviously, and then closing business. You have to know how to close business, and there's no secret to it. It's simply gain trust. Show people what you told them you would show them. And if you do that, chances are your numbers are going to be pretty good. And that's how I've always approached this. I don't set revenue or income goals. I set activity goals. How many people do I want at my workshops? How many people do I want to show up and sit in front of me? And from there, the other numbers follow. If you're serious about financial planning and specifically retirement income planning, you've got to make a commitment to understanding Social Security and the number of Social Security claiming strategies that people will face. If you can help people make Social Security the cornerstone of their retirement plan, you will undoubtedly, in profound ways, change their outcomes. They will go from possibly underfunded retirement plans to fully funded and hopefully even overly funded plans. You've got to look into becoming a Social Security claiming strategist. Do it now.